Thanks for joining in and welcome to the show. This is FemiDlive. I am FemiD Amelie. The elections are around the corner. Oh wait, the corners are in the elections. The many corners that one would unexpectedly find are making elections become quite unpredictable and even difficult to determine how things should go. Well, if you're observing any election around the world, there's some parameters that one may comfortably say will determine how things would go. Constantly, of course, would have to be the people who would vote, the electorate, the citizens who have their voters' cards or some level of assimilation into the voting exercise. Then you have the candidates, and then of course you have the supporters. These three categories oftentimes make up the live value of an election. Well, even though some say the supporters often pretty much determine where the weight of the election would go. Well, Ekiti state election just ended a few days ago in Nigeria, and it was of good interest just to determine a lot of how these characters, these parameters, and if not, how they all possibly influenced each other in one way or the other to determine how the election did pan out. I'm wondering if you are. What is the biggest factor in an election? Around the world of democracy, and I say in a world where democracy is often preached, it is best described that whosoever emerges as the candidate is the will of the people. In fact, it's best described that that is the prime result or benefit you can easily say comes from an election. An election where the people vote, their vote is counted, the results are announced, and they celebrate, and sometimes with the opponent conceding and gladly doing so as well. But then one would also wonder, what if there are external factors that come into an election? Now, external factors don't necessarily have to be risk. They just may be electoral inducements. What by law or the electoral law of Nigeria has come to be prohibited? Well, in the recent election conducted in Ekiti state, we found a lot of examples as regards how inducement can play a role in seeing how the electorates, the politicians, the candidates, and ultimately the supporters agree or disagree or make different choices around election. Let me give you an example. In Ekiti state, it was observed in a certain local government with the polling unit, where two agents of two different parties disagreed with each other, decided, and I say decided, to show who was superior, also decided to prove that they could do better by sprinkling each other with acid. Of course, in such a situation, there's always a victor and a victim. The victim was showcased to the media with pictures of him circulating saying, see what my opponent from the other party and from other parties could have done to me in what we best describe as a disagreement of revelation, or how well the revelation of election is going on. So you have that acid pouring moment from one party agent to another as part of the stories that go away from an election. But yet, I guess the biggest story would have to be the people themselves. Well, possibly every electorate, whether thousands as they become, or whether they're in 14 to 16 local governments where the choice of who would be the gubernatorial candidates that would emerge as governor-elect is chosen, one thing one can be sure of is, everyone that stays behind the polls or goes to the polls goes there with a story. Like the story of some old women, or one old woman, who was able to recount clearly why she's waiting out to choose. She feels that it's time to change the idea around the system, around the country. She has been around for generations and seen how well the governors in Ekiti state have tried, and some are still tried, and some will never get to try, to determine how the states will be governed in days ahead. So, in her old age, in her 80s, she finds herself dragged and also being moved, supported, and moved in the hearts, and if I would say, for the very future of our next generation and the generation after, to move to the polls, crawling through the sand with her hands and with her feet just supporting behind her, all the way to the poll she goes, just to have a thumbprint matched against a preferred candidate. In other words, this would have to be a choice. That's an example of something else that also happened in Ekiti state. But hold on, I'm getting to the point. But I guess as the stories of the electorates continue to build up, one that really beats my imagination would have to be the candidates or the electorates, I beg to say, that have responded carefully to when they're induced with money. Wait, let me make it easy. Being given money. So on one side, as people line up to vote in their numbers from the 10 to 100, from 10 to 100 they do line up, standing waiting to take their turns to mark who is their candidate. And as the mounted candidate, they come off showing who they voted for. But to what end? One will have said secret ballot is the process, but they do have to show who they voted for in order to end. Interestingly, political parties, or two leading parties in the states, were able to provide as much as 4,000 naira, 3,000 naira, 5,000 naira, and in some cases 10,000 naira. It all depends on how much you want, and also it all depends on how competitive that very polling unit is. So you find the electorates there voting and showing who they voted for in order to end. So even though tactically one may say that a vote buy is not a process, but then the votes are bought already in all essence. What do I mean? So comfortably, you find some of the electorates look down the aisle, having to choose between two parties. They choose money. Well, the question is, in the election that was conducted in Ekiti State, and maybe the ones that will be conducted in days to come, and even the 2019 elections that will be conducted, will poverty be the winner in the election? Are the electorates truly voting for their candidates, or are they voting for what will be a resolution of their state of poverty? At least for some few weeks. Some would earn 4,000 naira for 4 weeks in order just to wonder and wait what would be expected, or what would be the outcome of the 4-year tenure requested from them by the various candidates. It brings forward the question as well, who truly wins an election? Is it the candidates and all he has to do and all the things he says he would do, or is it poverty that do wins? What is the biggest motivation factor that helps people to win an election? Is it the candidate's charisma or lack of it? Is it the money that he provides? Is it the bullion advance that come in providing his money? Is it the thugs? Is it the essence, the presence, the what you want to name it? At what point do the electorates in Nigeria, will they vote for a candidate they believe will change the rest of their life? Or are they voting for poverty, which in many cases in recent times is building up to become the factor that wins the election? If poverty was a political party, it will beat every political party you can find in Nigeria now. So how do we change this? Think, and we will find out. Thanks for listening in to this very edition of the program. Remember, you can always catch up with me on any of the streaming platforms, which includes Amplified Radio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Apple Store, and 20 other leading platforms, if I may say. But of good interest for those who go to YouTube, go there, watch the video, let me know what you think and your active comments as regards the state of our nation. After all, the tales of Nigerian politics never really end. Thanks for listening in. I am FemiDlive. Send me your tweets.